Hey guys, Max here, and this is your daily update for yesterday, the 12th of February. Of course, it was a Saturday, so most markets were closed, but there is still a fair bit to talk about, some updates regarding Ukraine and COVID, along with a couple other stories, so let's just get right into it. Now, the markets that were open, crypto, what happened? Well, there weren't a huge amount of changes across the day. Bitcoin is still sitting just above $42,000 and Ethereum at about $2,900. Most of the altcoin market saw small increases or decreases, with the biggest change being from XRP, which rose about 7%. All in all though, not a whole lot of volatility, not a whole lot of movement in any direction, no major news from the crypto sphere either, so this is all just a little bit expected. Now, the really big thing to talk about today is going to be Ukraine. Tensions have been rising recently, over recent days especially, and the risk of war or conflict breaking out actually helped lead to a really poor performance of stocks on Friday, with American equities dropping by quite a lot. The big developments this week have been that military exercises in Belarus have started up, and there's a belief, or an apparent belief, that this could be the perfect time for Russia to invade Ukraine if that is what they intend to do. The idea here is that all the troops are congregated, they have been building up arms and supplies and everything like that, and they're all on the border as well. It would be very easy for Russian forces to just have a slight change of plan, head in a certain direction, and start an invasion of Ukraine. Now, Russia has been adamant that they will not invade Ukraine, or that they're not planning on invading, but they're also making threats that they will at the same time if Ukraine joins NATO, so it's all very complicated and realpolitik. Biden and Putin shared a phone call which apparently didn't achieve anything. Are we surprised by this? No, of course not. There have been countless meetings with countless different politicians between both sides over coming weeks, and most of these meetings are just being used by each respective side to pander to their domestic audiences, to appear big and strong and tough against the enemy, and no progress is really being made at all. Threats were apparently made, to be honest, though, coming from Biden. I can't imagine they scared someone like Putin at all, and the impasse is still present, that Russia wants guarantees that NATO will stop expanding and it will stop admitting new countries into the organization, and especially that Ukraine will never be allowed to join NATO. Now, the general view from the West on this is that independent sovereign nations should be allowed to do as they wish, align themselves with whichever countries they wish, and if they fear Russian aggression, rightly so let me add, they should be able to pursue NATO membership as well. Now, another development was that Russia claimed to have found an American submarine off the coast of the Kuril Islands, and that Russia intercepted the sub and forced it to retreat. The US is simply claiming that this didn't happen and it's being fabricated by the Russian state. Now, this sort of thing happens quite a lot, especially when tensions are high. It is entirely possible that this happened, but we, the normal people of the world, just don't know if it really did, and nor will we ever. We had something like this happening a few months ago in the Black Sea, with a British ship and the Russians claiming that they fired missiles at the Royal Navy and scared it off, and the British claiming that the Russians told them in advance that they were doing some live fire practices, and there was no altercation. Again, with this stuff, we really don't know which side is lying or telling the truth, and it's all about pandering to audiences. Finally now, Western nations have been telling their citizens to leave Ukraine over the last week, saying that it isn't safe, that tensions are rising, and if there is an invasion, they will not be safe either. This has also started to extend to diplomatic staff, many of whom are being evacuated out of the country. Now, this is eerily similar to the disaster in Afghanistan a few months ago, where the US was not at all proactive in getting people out of the country until the last week, when everything came to a head and it all went quite poorly, quite quickly. The US is probably just trying to avoid these same problems from popping up here, and they don't want another Chinook on the embassy photo to go along with the ones in Kabul and Saigon. Now, the final thing worth mentioning regarding the whole situation in Ukraine is the parallels being drawn to that and the situation with China and Taiwan, and this is for good reason. If Russia is simply able to force the West to stand off and back down because they are afraid of a conflict breaking out, and say Russia invades and the West does nothing, it's almost an absolute guarantee that China would then look to do the same sort of thing in Taiwan. Now, lots of parallels are being drawn to Hitler in the 1930s with the Anschluss of Austria, the Sudetenland, and then finally Danzig as well, and the abject failure of appeasement during the 30s, and then the idea that Western leaders, but some more than others, might be pursuing that same sort of appeasement diplomacy. Now, in a quick COVID update, what is going on around the world? Well, in China in particular, it's not looking so great. Hong Kong has just announced it has 3,000 cases, which is a very high number for the city, and it's representative of the city's failure to stop the spread of the virus as they've been trying to. Hong Kong is now seeking help from mainland China to build quarantine facilities, testing sites, helping them analyze strains, all kinds of things like that. And China as well, the actual mainland itself, is seeing cases pop up around the Winter Olympics as well, which has been a big fear for them. They thought they were in the clear 3 or 4 months ago, the virus was mostly under control, and the CCP thought the Winter Olympics would be some great nationalist event showing off the country, but then Omicron came around and ruined those plans. Why? Well, because the Sinovac vaccines that China has been giving out to its populace are not very effective against the Omicron variant, which sort of puts them at square one again. As a result, numerous cities have been shut down in their entirety, people are again being forced into quarantine camps, and it's just like 2020 again for China, right as the eyes of the world are upon them. Now, regarding protests in the West, mostly surrounding vaccine mandates and COVID restrictions in general, well, they're growing. Canada, of course, had the Freedom Convoy that grew to be huge, and on Saturday, protests started blocking a major bridge, preventing people from getting access across Windsor to Detroit. Now, because this is on the border between Canada and the US, it's gotten a fair bit more attention and scrutiny than it otherwise might have. Far more media coverage, and the bridge is now starting to be cleared by police. These protests, though, really are present all over the world in varying different degrees. In France, pretty major ones were planned. Motorists were going to go shut down a bunch of roads across Paris and bring the city to a standstill, but the police have been intercepting people, stopping them from going to the protest. But still, plenty of protesters got through and they started blocking roads, and so the police came along with tow trucks and tear gas to try and clear everything out. Now, we mentioned this earlier in the week, but Frenchmen in general enjoy good protests. The Gilets Jaunes protest went on for months and they got absolutely huge, and I would be seriously surprised if this were the end of it for protests against vaccine mandates in France. Now finally, a quick update regarding a country we don't touch on an awful lot, and that is New Zealand, where there are also protests going on. The narrative being pushed there is that the police have been very quaint and light-handed regarding the protest, but I'm not sure if that's a fair point to make. On Thursday, 122 people were arrested for protesting. Not violently, they just weren't allowed by law to protest, so they were arrested, and I don't think that constitutes taking a hands-off approach, to be honest. Now, just a very quick bit of news from the UK and our domestic politics. Our Prime Minister's new Chief of Staff put out a statement claiming that to cope with the impacts of COVID on the country, we need to shrink the size of the state. And this is the first sensible thing I've seen come from our government in quite some time, and it's good to hear. I will link the statement down below in the description, but basically it recognises that we have too much debt. We have a bloated state that is unnecessarily big, and this should represent a shift of the Tory party back to being fiscally responsible, as they haven't been at all over the last 2 years. Now, I'm sorry that was quite a short video today. Again, I'm not sure if I'm going to have time to put out a video tomorrow, but I might be able to. If you enjoyed this video, then leave a like and a comment to bless the YouTube algorithm. If you want more content like this, then check out our Patreon and join our community of investors. You get access to our Discord, loads of exclusive content like insight into my portfolio and buy and sell alerts for all my own investments. There's a link in the description to masterworks.io, a site that allows you to buy fractional shares of art from world famous artists like Banksy, which can be a great way to diversify your portfolio with non-market correlated assets. It's completely free to sign up, you don't have to buy anything, you don't have to hand over any card information, so if that sounds interesting, then make sure to check it out. There's also a link in the description to BlockFi, which will give you up to $250 in free Bitcoin when you use it. You can also get 9% interest on stablecoins like USDC, which is a far higher rate than you get from any savings account these days. Just make sure not to use Tether. Thank you all for the support, thanks for watching, stay stoic, until next time.